We're going to go back to Dan Hoffman right now. And Dan, we were discussing Putin's motivations, and it's hard to read between the lines, but we'll see whether or not you have 20 or 30 political prisoners involved in this swap. What is your read right now as you see it?
Right. I think that is an unknown. What brought Vladimir Putin to the negotiating table to make a deal right now? Look, the negotiations have been ongoing. Dana's right. Paul Whelan was arrested in 2018, sentenced to 16 years in 2020. So these negotiations have been ongoing for quite some time, and it's been a rolling process. Remember, we traded the merchant of death, Victor Bout, to get Brittany Griner out, and those negotiations did encompass, reportedly, others, including Paul Whelan. It's just that he wasn't included at that time. I feel sure that the Senate and House Intelligence Committees will receive briefings from the CIA, from the intelligence community writ large, so that they can learn what Vladimir Putin's motivation was. In my experience, just as the U.S. president and the White House are involved in these negotiations, tracking them closely, so too is Vladimir Putin. He runs what he likes to call a vertical of power, vertikalnaya vlast. Every major decision runs up through his control in the Kremlin.
What do you know about timing of these types of things when they all come together? I mean, in some ways, you can imagine this has been going on for a very long time, very secretive, and then it like happens right away. But things could go sideways, which is why we're being fairly cautious until we see some proof that this has been done successfully and safely.
Yeah, the negotiations are painstaking, and they're held in secret for a reason. I think both Russia and, frankly, the United States benefit from the fact that they're not exposed to the vagaries of public scrutiny and diplomatic scrutiny. They're held behind closed doors, very, very much in secret. As far as what brings a final deal, ultimately, it's when both sides believe that this is the best deal they're going to get. The Russians may have been motivated, I think, Bill, you've noted, by the fact that they desperately want Vadim Krasnikov back from Berlin. We may have convinced them that this is their last best chance to get him back. We'll just have to wait for more details on that.
You know, Dan, when you view, look at Putin's perspective here. He's fighting this war now. He's two and a half years into it. Maybe they have fought their way to the point where it's a stalemate on both sides. Maybe not. We'll see. We had thought that his economy would be weakened. It was initially. Apparently, it's not now. He's forged these alliances with Beijing and Pyongyang and Tehran. And really, Dan, it's those four countries that will give the United States, our NATO allies, our allies in the Pacific, the biggest hassle on just about any issue there is in the world. And how do you think Putin sees his position among those four countries? Is he an equal, or is he the leader?
No, he's the weakest he's ever been in the Kremlin. And look, Bill, Russia's economy has suffered. They're suffering from high inflation. It's an unbalanced wartime economy. He's suffering thousands of casualties every day, hundreds of thousands of casualties. And if you're looking for one of the motivations for why he might have struck a deal now, he needs to demonstrate to his own security services, his inner circle, that he can get his own guys back when they are imprisoned rightfully for breaking the law. And that's the way Vladimir Putin will play it. He needs to do everything he can to shore up his regime's security. The Russians, look, he went hat in hand to North Korea because he needs North Korean artillery. He desperately needs to export his hydrocarbons to China, and he's relying on Iran for drones. In return, for sure, Vladimir Putin is giving those countries intelligence support and diplomatic top cover, including to Iran's proxy terrorist allies like Hamas. But I would argue Vladimir Putin is weaker today than he's arguably ever been, and that makes him more dangerous. But in this case, I think, in terms of this prisoner swap, it makes him far more open to a resolution.
Wow. Dan, if you, we're going to get a break here, and we'll bring on Brett. He's working some information, too, on the other side of the commercial break. But, Dan, just quickly here. If you find your way to a truce in Ukraine, somehow, some way, over the next 6 months, just theoretically speaking for the purpose of this conversation here, that becomes the new front line in Cold War 3.0, does it not? Russia to the east, NATO to the west.
Yeah, look, Ukraine is on the front lines right now defending Europe from aggressive Russia, hell-bent on targeting its neighbors kinetically. We've seen a lot of Russian hybrid operations in Eastern Europe. So yes, Bill, there is that. There certainly is the potential for an armistice, for a negotiation, for a ceasefire. Wars end when one side wins or both sides are too exhausted to fight. And the question is whether we're nearing that point where both sides might be at the point where they would consider negotiations. But look, Ukraine, the Biden administration's been clear. They're going to let Ukraine make that decision for themselves.
Dan Hoffman, thank you so much.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.